Welcome to the Pluto Lounge, where we just chill. A new Final Fantasy VII Rebirth trailer dropped at State of Play, and wow, it was amazing. So much cool stuff is shown, but for this, we're going to focus on analyzing the story elements. Be warned, I will talk about heavy Final Fantasy VII original game and remake spoilers. Anywho, let's dive into it, shall we? The big remake theory, well, honestly, I can't even call it just a theory at this point because it's all but confirmed. Basically, at some point after Advent Children, a livestream attempted to overwrite the timeline. In Remake, we were playing the livestream's remake of the same events. Unfortunately, there were two wildcards, Aerith and Sephiroth, who both retained some memories of events that have already taken place. Because of this, their presence advertently and inadvertently slightly alters the current events, forcing the Whispers to course correct. This eventually spiraled out of control, leading all the way to the party defeating Harbinger. With the trailer, right off the bat, we see Zack carrying Cloud in Sector 5, and later on in the trailer, we see Zack interact with Kyrie. Before I go further, I need to go over the other theories. Now, after the remake, there are two big theories regarding Zack being alive. Theory 1 is that Zack is technically alive, but he exists in a live stream and he interacts with a projection of the real world. If you're having a hard time picturing this, think back on Tifa repairing Cloud's mind in a live stream in the original game. In my opinion, Zack interacting with Kyrie debunks the livestream theory. Zack has never met Kyrie, so he wouldn't have any memories of her, and she is still alive. Even if he did meet her off screen way back in Crisis Core, Zack has been in Nibelheim for 5 years, so she would be a child in his memory. The second big theory is that reality has been split into two different timelines. I personally hope this isn't the case and that everything is in one timeline. The original story was already convoluted. Then when you add Crisis Core, Dirge of Cerberus, Advent Children, and Remake, the story is already complex enough. That being said, there are several hints to multiple timelines. In Final Fantasy VII Remake, we constantly see Stamp as a beagle. However, after the party defeats Harbinger, stopping the livestream in the middle of creating another remake, we later on see Stamp now as a terrier while in Zack's perspective. Although this doesn't prove there is another timeline, it definitely shows something funky is going on. The trailer gives more legs to this theory as we can see the beagle Stamp in Junin, presumably in the OG original game timeline. And I gotta give a shout out to Dames I Makes It Soon for finding that. Basically, Timeline 1, or Timeline Beagle, is the original game party chasing Sephiroth. Timeline 2, or Timeline Terrier, is Zack alive with Cloud, number 2. Next, in the Summer Game Fest trailer, we see a Shinra broadcast showing the dead bodies of Barret, Tifa, Red, and Aerith. Notice that Cloud and Yuffie are missing. Now this could just be Shinra propaganda to regain control of the Midgar population after the disastrous events. A clue to this is that Barret is missing his tattoo. Another thought is that with Zack surviving, the timeline has changed. Cloud does not snap out of comatose after Zack's death, so he does not walk to a train station where Tifa finds him. Avalanche continues on with their bombing missions and infiltrates Shinra to rescue Aerith, meeting Red along the way, and die. Damn. I don't like saying that. Speaking of the one-winged angel, now there are two of them. One is chilling in a crystal at the northern crater, while the other is doing who knows what. In the trailer, it's obvious the party is chasing Sephiroth, but which one? Shout out to Audrey who did an amazing translation of the Ultimania book before the official release, granting us early access until we could purchase the real thing. So what is Advent Children Sephiroth up to? We know in the original that after the events of Nibelheim, dude went crazy. He was so blazing high in himself he would refer to himself like an ancient or a god. However, in the scene at the edge of creation, Sephiroth refers to himself as I, like he did before the events of Nibelheim, which I think this means is that Sephiroth is finally operating in peak mental condition, and that is scary. In Advent Children, Sephiroth's goal was to infect people with geostigma. Then they would die, spreading it across the planet and livestream. Then Sephiroth would use the corruption to gain full control of the planet and use it as a space carriage, traveling the stars until he finds a new planet. At the edge of creation, Sephiroth tries to team up with Cloud to defy destiny. Then in the trailer, we see Sephiroth say, "You know the truth. Trust in me." It seems the one-winged angel has switched up his game plan and wants Cloud to join him. Why? Is this just another attempt to manipulate Cloud? Or does Sephiroth know what's coming is too big for him alone? What does Sephiroth mean by, "It's upon us, the reunion"? When worlds merge. At the end of Remake, Sephiroth also says, our world will become a part of it one day, while looking at a nebula, then adds, but I will not end, nor will I have you end. We do know that at the end of the original Final Fantasy VII, 500 years later, humanity was completely wiped out at some point in between. This is also shown in the remake when Aerith restores Red's memories. What Sephiroth says at the Edge of Creation ties into Dirge Cerberus, where we learn about Chaos and Omega. Omega is a vessel that will carry the planet's entire life stream across the stars to a new location. However, Omega will first summon Chaos, which is a manifestation of everything evil and that rejects assimilation of the life stream, like the Genova cells. This evil entity will wipe out all life, enabling Omega to transport a pure life stream. So just as souls return to the life stream, so too will the planet return to whence it came.